Um, Hello.
Hi.
Hi there. Hi. So my name is Alonzo, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about grad school and research experience in grad school. So I thought I'd start off by just giving a little bit of background of who I am, so you know who I am. So I'm just about to start my fourth year in grad school, a PhD program at the Gerstner Sloan Kettering Graduate School down the street. I currently work in the Department of Immunology. Is there anybody interested in immunology here? One?
Ish.
Two? Okay. And I have a really good project, and I'll talk a little bit about that. But I graduated from San Francisco State University with a master's and a bachelor's in cell and molecular biology. And I believe one of you guys are from San Francisco State, right? Oh, man. That's my alumni. So anyways, so what happened was, graduate school for me wasn't exactly like the first option. In fact, the thing I wanted to do first was go to med school. Are anybody interested in medicine or MD, PhD? Okay. So soon after volunteering at hospitals and hanging out with some MD folks, I really found, and actually hanging out with more PhD people, I found out that I was more interested in research, which is why I went into a master's program before I joined a PhD, because I wasn't quite sure exactly what it was that I wanted to do. And during that time, I had a really wonderful research experience. And what we did was we worked in, are you guys familiar with what gene therapy is? Everybody is? Okay. So what we try to do is engineer non-viral vectors to overexpress pro-apoptotic genes so that they would kill tumors. So this is all in the context of cancer. And simultaneously express those pro-apoptotic genes to kill the tumor and suppress genes by expressing multiple small hairpin RNAs. You guys probably know what those are too, or no? Yes. Just speak freely if you want me to explain anything. So anyways, so after doing that, I got really interested in cancer research, which is why I applied to Sloan Kettering, which is the world's leader in cancer research. Since I got there, I joined the Department of Immunology, and right now I have two projects. One is a real basic biology project, which means that I'm trying to understand the nuts and bolts of T-cell development. So what we do is we overexpress the gene of interest that we're studying, and I could talk a little bit about that later, and also remove it from the animal to see what happens to T-cell development in the absence of the gene. This gene is also really powerful as far as endowing T cells with particular functional capacity, and what we're trying to do is harness that functional capacity into and overexpress it in other immune cells, and investigate whether or not this could be potentially used as a cancer therapy. So I have a basic biology project where we're just trying to understand what the gene does, and then I have a translational project, which means we're taking what we know about this gene and trying to apply it to medicine, translational research. So that's basically the brief overview of where I came from and where I'm at right now. So is everyone different grade level? Everyone it's all mixed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Any freshmen here?
Sophomore.
1, 2. Oh my God, you guys are young. I didn't even do this when I was at your guys' level. This is great. I mean, I wish I knew about these programs when I was a sophomore. So how many of you guys are thinking about grad school? Are you guys close to graduating? Are you starting to apply soon? Or okay, all over the place, or do you have particular places in mind?
Well, I want to go to UCSD.
UCSD?
Yeah.
That's a great school.
That would be ideal. But
Yeah, they have actually a lot of cancer research and all kinds of stuff. But what are you interested in?
Neuroscience.
Oh, okay. I don't know too much about that, but I'm sure they have a great department there.
They do.
Yeah.
It's one of the best.
Yeah, it's a great institution. In fact, it's starting to climb on the ranks nationally. which, whatever that means. Anybody else?
I'm just going to stay in the South. I'm not coming back up this far.
You're staying where?
In the South.
In the South?
Yes.
So what kind of research do you do?
Well, right now I'm doing chemistry, like RNA research, but my interest is more towards cancer.
Okay. And where are you applying? Anybody else? Want to share their experience?
I don't have any particular schools in general, but I want to stay in California. I'm from California.
She went to the same school.
Oh, you're the San Francisco State person.
Yeah, I'm like late, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I graduated from San Francisco State as well.
Oh, okay. Did you do your master's there? Or just
I did.
Grad?
I did both.
Oh, what major? What was your grad degree in?
Cell Molecular.
Oh, what was your PI?
Well, I did my research.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's okay. I'm sorry.
So I did my research off campus,
Oh.
but my sponsor was Laura Burris.
Oh, okay.
Do you know Laura?
Yeah, I work with Dr. Leticia Marquez Magana.
Oh, I know her very well.
Okay.
She's on my committee.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I invited her to come speak, and she was here a couple weeks ago. So, at this function we had. So I know her very well, and actually I had lunch with her when I was in California 3 weeks ago. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that worked in her lab. So you were saying that you want to stay in California?
Yeah, but I'm thinking about, since I've been out here in New York for like maybe a week or so, I'm thinking about like flying off to New York for school as well.
Well, I obviously I'm from California, and I was pretty set on staying there. But I would encourage you to apply all over the place. It's the grad school and college are your opportunities to live in other places, for a good reason.
Right.
And I will have to say that coming from California, I did not like New York at first because we're kind of laid back and everyone's pretty happy and pretty chill, and everyone here is like stressed out, and I actually did not like that too much. And the food here I think is terrible, but that's just between you and I. The food sucks. The food's terrible. I'm sorry. Oh, it's awful. No, nothing's wrong with me. Nothing's wrong with me. Trust me. I had 3 people agree with me. So anyways, but the point I'm trying to make is that I would strongly recommend applying to a broad spectrum of schools. Yes? What's this? Okay, I'll talk about that. Because it's just a good idea to do that anyways. In fact, I had a friend of mine just apply to like 5 of the top schools, and he was a really strong candidate. But as you know, with the economy going down, everyone's like going back to school, and this person didn't get into any of those schools. So not only apply to places all over the country, but a broad spectrum, because you just never know who you're competing with, regardless if you're really strong or not, because you don't want to end up in that boat. But no, I love New York now. I've got accustomed to the people and the bad food. I mean, God, the Mexican food here is just terrible. It's just very sad. It's very sad. But anyways, no, it's great. So, well, that's good. What else was I going to say? So, I guess as far as research goes, I mean, I'm assuming this is your guys' first research experience, or have you guys done this program in the past? Anybody?
Not this program.
But you've done another one?
Not another program, but I've worked in the lab before.
Really? Okay. I mean, what is your experience so far? Like of
For
both?
This program. Oh.
From either,
Well,
I mean.
it's very different because I was just learning techniques, and it was visual neuro lab, and this is more like biopsych. And supposed to be conducting my own project, so it's definitely different. I didn't have to write up anything for my other experience, and I just sort of jumped into it. And I was helping someone else with their project.
And everything's going pretty well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for those of you that's your first research experience, like, does anybody want to comment like on how that's going or what your experience is with that? Any brave souls?
Well, if nobody else can talk, I will.
Yeah, go ahead.
Like, I'm really enjoying my experience because I've had a lot of labs, like at Clemson University, that's where I go to. And a lot of the things that we're doing in lab now, I already know how to do, so it's not as hard. Everybody's really helpful, and they don't expect you to know everything like they do, so they're like, just force you to the lab. That's why it's nice.
Yeah, that's important because I think the reason why I ask this question is because joining a lab or rotating a lab or doing a summer program can be pretty intimidating. Because you're around people that are really smart. They've been doing what they've been doing probably for a while, and that could be tough because they just say, do this, do this, do this, and they scribble down notes, and you're expected to perform these experiments. So one of the things that I think that's important for anybody that's going to join a graduate program and continue in science is just have confidence in yourself and don't let one or two bad experiences ruin it for you or anything. It's hard. I mean, in any job, perseverance. You have to persevere, and the reason why I say that is not only because it's not like just some tagline I'm supposed to say. It's because I was put in a really good lab when I first started out, but it was really challenging. I never worked in a science lab, and I was kind of at the time a little more MD focused instead of like free thinking smart people focused. You'll learn someday. No, we need MDs. They're great. No, they are. It was kind of an inside joke. But anyways, so we, I went to the lab and it was really tough. These people were at the top of their field. The lab I started in was one of the people that pioneered the research that I was doing. So, these people were really top-notch researchers. And so, I had a postdoc who didn't really know how to teach very well, and I don't know if any of you guys have that experience. Hopefully you don't. But know that, as long as you keep at what you're doing, you have to look at all the avenues. I mean, you don't have to always work with the same person, talk to your PI, but the point is it can be pretty challenging, and I would stress not to get discouraged by that because, you're going to change labs, especially when you go to grad school and stuff like that. So you just have to have confidence in yourself and persevere past the tough times because science is one of those things that's just going to constantly beat you down. And that's just the plain facts. You're going to lose more times than you're going to win. But the point is that you just have to keep going and pursuing the questions that you're asking, and hopefully you get the results that you want. But I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's tough. But, it sounds like, since you're here, you're not exactly wimps. It sounds like you're probably tough people. So it can be tough. So it's a long process. Like my program, so as I mentioned before, you guys know where Cornell and Rockefeller and Sloan Kettering are down the street? So one of the reasons why I say explore your options is because when I came to New York, I'm at Sloan Kettering, and so there's three of the world-class institutions right there, and then you guys are down the street, NYU's down the street, and Einstein's up north, and everybody's around Columbia. And what happens is I've got to know a lot of people around here because everything is so close-knit, but a lot of these top institutions produce, obviously really top researchers, and I've been able to collaborate with a lot of those people, and we're doing collaborations actually with Ben Ortiz here. Who else? I've gotten to know Robert. So it's been really nice to come here to New York and be able to be in such a small area with such a high concentration of researchers. But the grad school that I chose I did on for a few reasons. First of all, I came to do cancer research, but I don't even really do that anymore. I have a cancer project, but maybe I should back up. Talk about applying to grad school. So a few of you guys are applying, right? Have you taken your GREs? No? Okay. So yeah, that could be, so GREs, I have my opinions about them. I did well. It's just, I don't know if they're the best mechanism, but you're going to have to take them, so you're going to have to study for them and stuff. And I would highly recommend studying for them. Obviously, the better scores that you get, the better you'll do. But what I would really strongly advise is get people that are going to write you strong letters of recommendation. And I'm not talking about, hey, will you give me a recommendation a week before it's due? Talk to somebody before, and not only ask them if they'll write you one, ask them if they'll write you a good one. There is a clear difference. These people see letters all the time, and if they see the standard, oh, this was a great student, blah, 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 I recommend them, with no enthusiasm, I mean, people are going to know what that means. So it's important to get to know your advisors really well, and way before you have to do this, because you don't want to spring this on them a week before. Even if they're going to write you a good one, if you tell them a week before, they might rush it and not say all the great things that they should about you. So do that, and also really focus on your statement of purpose or personal statement. There's actually a difference. And depending on where you apply, they'll say statement of purpose or personal statement. And one of the mistakes that I made is I was pretty good at what I was doing, and I was so focused on what I wanted to do, and I wrote this like, I want to do this, and this is like, just, it was like tunnel vision. It wasn't like, I love science for the sake of science, and it could be studying rocks, as long as I'm asking a question and investigating something. It was kind of like, I want to do this only, and I think that kind of narrowed my options a little bit as far as like someone reading it. So I would keep it broad, but keep the overlying theme being that you're interested in science, and don't worry about, like, if it's neuroscience, don't just, I wouldn't suggest that you put I love neuroscience and only neuroscience. Keeping your options open, because I guarantee you probably 75% of you will completely change your research between now and your grad school to your postdoc, and well, probably by your postdoc you'll find what you want to do, but I am in a totally different area than I was before, so leave that out of your statement. And just get your stuff sent in before the due dates and all that. So anyways, that's what I did. I applied to one East Coast school, and look where I ended up. Not because, I came here because of the interview and the people that I met. I applied to UCSD, and that was great, but I don't like Southern California. I'm sorry. But it was a great program, and a couple others, but I found that Sloan Kettering for me was the fit. And the reason why is that you have to really look at the program that you're applying to. Most PhDs are pretty rigorous, so you want to make the right decision, and they can last a long time. But for example, the Gerstner program is kind of based on like the Cold Spring Harbor model, which is kind of accelerated. So everybody has a different program, obviously. Ours is kind of impacted, meaning that it's all front-loaded as far as the classwork. So we went to class 5 days a week for 3 hours a day for 9 months. But after that, we were totally done. And we did 4-week rotations that were full-time in between. Well, actually, the first thing you do is a rotation. You do class, and then winter break, you do your second rotation, and then after classes are over in May, you do your third, and then you pick a lab. And less than a year being in the program, you're already working full-time in a lab. So I like that aspect of it. Other people, and that's actually, that kind of model is starting to gain ground, like at UCSF and some other places. So we kind of feel nice that we're kind of pioneering different ways of doing grad school. So explore those options, look at what they do. I mean, it can be kind of tough. Like most places, you'll do class and rotate in your labs at the same time. But the advantage of that is that you kind of get a mix. You're not always in class or always in lab. You kind of get both. But the disadvantage is that you can't fully focus on one completely. So most people don't get anything done in the rotation projects, and that can affect your feeling on the lab and stuff like that. So these are things to consider. And then after that, I basically have been in the lab for 2 years now, because I'm just starting my 4th year. And it's been really great. Your rotations are going to be extremely important. You get to choose, of course, like a couple of places to kind of test the waters. And what I would recommend is just basically getting to know the people in the lab. That's going to be one of the more important things. Forget about how famous the lab PI is or whatever, because in fact, the more famous they are, I would discourage going into those labs, because they'll probably pay the least amount of attention to you, just because they're busy. It's nothing personal. So at Sloan Kettering, we have a lot of big wigs. I mean, tons of famous people. And I chose to pick a lab where it was a little smaller and a little more intimate, so I'd have more interaction with my PI and also the members of my lab. But getting along with your lab members is really important. because that could really either, accelerate projects or the other way around. And so I've been fortunate that we have a really good lab and good people. And so we've been able to publish a couple papers and get some really good science done. So let's see, I've been talking for a while. So basically right now, our school is relatively new. I'm part of the first class, so we're kind of a test program, pilot program. So, nobody has really graduated, but hopefully we'll be graduating. Like, they're already asking us like when we plan to graduate, and we've only been there for not even 4 years yet. So there are some programs, like I said, like at least us and Cold Spring Harbor and maybe UCSF. They're kind of trying to adopt the same scheme. You might be able to finish your PhD earlier, so. But that all kind of depends on your project. So I guess, does anybody have any questions about grad school that I can answer? I kind of gave you just my brief overview of what I've done.
Well, just a kind of personal on your experience. What are you planning on doing after?
That's a great question. That was something I was going to ask or talk about towards the end. So I have a lot of interests. So the short answer is I'm not sure yet. Probably a postdoc. So I'm kind of in one of these conflicted areas. So I really love science. I love it. I really do. It's fun to go in the lab and ask a question, do an experiment, see what the answer is. And just to speak on that a little bit, I mean, right now I couldn't be happier in my lab. Like, we're really discovering a lot of new stuff, and I have a paper in review right now, and we're almost done with it. And it's in a really high journal. I hope it gets published. But it's really fun to be in a lab. But, like many people, you have a lot of different aspects of your personality that you want to explore and do things with. And so I am currently exploring other things such as science policy and, mostly that. But there are a lot of avenues you can go down as a PhD. I mean, nowadays there's even programs in grad school designed around this. And there was an article in Science by the editor-in-chief a few months ago about how he's going to incorporate more of these different avenues, at least job perspectives, in Science magazine, so people will be able to explore these. But there's law, there's business, there's science policy, there's all kinds of things. And right now I'm kind of pursuing certain areas of policy. And one of the ways that I'm trying to do that, and probably one of the reasons why I'm speaking to you guys today, is that in New York City we have, so when I came here there's not a lot of minorities in science. That's first of all. Okay, so I'm Mexican. And when I came here, there was a program established for minorities in science, a graduate student program initiated by graduate students. So I joined this network to kind of just see what it was about and, whatever. I ended up co-chairing it, and now, hopefully we'll have elections and someone will take my job because I've had it for too long. But we've been able to do a lot of great things, but the ball is just starting to roll. We're just starting. We're in the process of becoming a nonprofit and stuff like that. But the goal of the group is to not only retain the number of minorities in science, but also increase the numbers, and just people in science in general, because there's been a sharp decline over the past few years due to funding issues and all kinds of stuff. But we had a symposium a few months ago where we invited Dr. Marquez Magana, and she spoke on women in science and being a minority woman in science and all of these issues, and it was really wonderful. And through this program, I got to know Robert Doughton, and I helped plan a committee for a symposium here. So these kind of social science issues, social issues in biological sciences or science in general, are one of the things I might go into. So that's kind of the long answer. So that's one of the things I'm involved in. I'm also the president of my school, and I'm trying to get people to get our program involved in the community. And one way we're doing that is working with the United Way. So there's plenty of programs that the United Way funds for people that don't have money, and some of that money goes to science programs. And so what we do is we actively go to schools and talk about science. And we also are planning, I'm trying to organize something where the students can come to Sloan Kettering and hear some of our top scientists talk about science and all of that stuff. Because science is cool. It's not, it is cool. And to be perfectly honest, even from a business standpoint, pharmaceuticals and drugs and medicine and all that drives a huge component of our economy, and that's just the plain facts. So we need scientists. So those are kind of some of the aspects, side projects that I'm in. And it also has allowed me to get to know an enormous amount of people. I know a lot of people. Not because I'm hella cool or anything, but that too. But no, I mean just networking. And the truth is, I mean, you get to collaborate with people and you get to know people, and then they start calling you for stuff. And I almost have too much to do now. And so I think while you're well, sometimes it can be kind of distracting. But when you get to grad school, I would strongly encourage getting involved in all kinds of stuff, and if something doesn't exist, create it, because the science community needs to be a little more cohesive. There's also a program called Scientists and Engineers of America, and they have chapters all over the U.S. And this is kind of a club or a network of researchers that are interested in science policy and social issues. So there are a lot of things that you can be involved in besides just the lab bench. And, so that's some of the stuff. Even though I'm at the lab bench all the time, you can still be involved in other stuff. So we'll see. If the funding continues to be good, I mean, I could definitely envision myself having a lab at some point. I guess it kind of just depends on, where that is and how I feel about things at that particular moment. But I'll probably do a postdoc, and we'll see what happens there. So I don't quite know, actually.
Do you already have the doctorate?
No, I'm in grad school. That's why I'm talking about grad school. Yeah. Do you know what this is about? You guys are like, who is this weird bald guy up there?
So do you see yourself finishing next year?
I could finish next year. I could even finish probably this year. I doubt they would let me, but technically it could, if you look at our handbook. But the point is grad school is supposed to be, when I first came here, I did a master's, and like I mentioned before, so I'm a little bit older than some of my colleagues, but that doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. So when I first came here, I thought I was like, I'm going to bang it out in 4 years and get out of here. But, a lot of, and then the economy tanked, so, there's not a ton of jobs right now. They're starting to increase again, but, that's just a fact of something you can't control. But, grad school is a great experience, and you're going to be treated probably pretty well compared to the way you're going to be treated as a postdoc. Because you're not, you're a student, it's a training program. So, and in my school, it's a very small school. We only take 10 to 12 people out of the entire program a year. So we get a lot of attention paid to us, and that's something that you should really look at and consider when you're applying. How big is your program? How many people they take a year? Because you don't want to just be another face in the crowd. You want somebody to pay attention to you and know who you are. And although I'm sure a lot of the investigators at Sloan Kettering don't know me by name, even though they've taught me, or 1 or 2 days of the year, I mean, everybody kind of recognizes each other and says hello. And I mean, some of these people, like Harold Varmus, who's Nobel laureate and also one of the 3 advisors of Obama's science committee, is always in the halls and chat him up when he has a millisecond, because he's a real busy guy, about just stuff, and hang out and have a coffee with these people. So that's one of the advantages of being in a small program. But yeah, so we'll see. I like it. We're treated pretty well there. So Sloan Kettering in particular, actually most New York schools you get paid a little bit more because Manhattan's pretty expensive. So we live up here in the Upper East Side, which is okay. I mean, it's pretty, it's quiet, but it's Friday nights you got to go south. But tonight, tomorrow. Sunday. So in New York also, in these big cities, I mean, you have you have so much to do. I mean, grad school life is fun. I mean, it's the one time where it won't matter as much if you screw up on your experiments, and if you're in New York City, you can blow off the day if you mess up by having a lot of fun doing other things, and that's really important because you're going to spend 5 to some cases 7 years in PhD program. You want it to be in a fun place, hopefully. So I would highly recommend New York. There's a lot of options. So
it seems like you have a good balance of like work and play. Most of the people in your lab like strictly like lab work, nothing else.
Yeah, I mean, there's always some of those. I mean, you'd be surprised. I mean, so I work a lot. I mean, I work it depends on what it is, but I probably work 70-something hours, maybe more a week. So, I mean, yeah, you're going to have to work a lot. There's no...
Nothing driving yourself crazy. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm already crazy, so I don't really know where else there is to go. No, but like I was at work the other day till 5 in the morning, and then came back at 8, and then worked till 3 in the morning the next day. So, I mean, you're going to have days like that. But what you do have to, that's a good point though, you have to strike that balance. People that have successful PhDs and just careers in general have a good balance. So, although I'm working a lot like right now, and that's of course to get this paper done, I'm going to take some time off, and hopefully you have an understanding boss who will like push you out of the lab like my boss is. He's like, dude, you're looking bad, man. I got bloodshot eyes. I had the beard going for a while. And anyways, so that's really important. That's a really important point. I mean, one of the most important things, I guess, is the balance once you get there, because you want it to be fun. You don't want it to suck. And you hear a lot of people complain. Well, it's because they're not doing it right. I mean, some of them have the unfortunate case of having either a bad boss or a crappy project, but I mean, I can't complain. I have no complaints, and that's the honest truth. So that's it on grad school. I mean, unless you guys have questions, I mean.
You said you did a master's first and then into a PhD program. Aren't there some places where you can finish your undergrad and go into a PhD program?
No, you can. You don't have to get a master's to get a PhD.
What would you suggest? Would you have done it the other way, or are you happy that you did it the way you did?
I'm happy I did it the way I did because of my situation. Like I said, I was at first thinking of med school, and then late in my undergrad, I started, med school, they want you to have research experience too, so I started doing research. And I was like, wow, this is actually really fun. You could take genes and cut and paste them and put them in animals and then do all this stuff. And I was like, and now just things went crazy, and it was fun. So, but I didn't have quite the research experience to apply to a PhD program. I mean, it just wouldn't have happened. I mean, I only had like less than a year, and at least to the programs that I wanted. Maybe I would have got in, but I wasn't confident, basically. So I took those extra 2 years to work on my research. And actually, I mean, with 6 months, I didn't really even know if that's what I want to ultimately do anyway. So for me, it was fine to do a master's, even though it took longer, because it gave me opportunity to work with Dr. Marquez Mgania and all these other people and make connections and do all this stuff and really kind of give me the ideas that I needed, or the information, I should say, that I needed to apply to a PhD program. So I think it's really case-by-case basis. I mean, it will take longer. One of the things that PhD programs won't tell you is that if for some reason, I probably shouldn't tell you this either, you just can't do it or can't stand it anymore, and they'll give you a master's degree. If you are done after 2 years or can't take it. But that's not recommended. Of course, a PhD, they invest a lot of money in each student, so, I mean, that's kind of a no subject. You don't want to talk about that too much, but you can earn a master's if you don't go through the whole PhD, but that's not what you're going to do anyway. So. But yeah, I mean, if you need that extra time, even nowadays it's recommended that you take an extra time between undergrad and applying to grad school. It's so competitive that they want people that really want to do research, because they'll have people that will either drop out, like I mentioned, and get a master's, or that are just doing it to go to med school or whatever, or to use it as a backup. I know a person who's doing it just because he didn't get into med school, and that's not the right reason. what was I going to say? So taking a year off to just focus on your research is also another avenue you guys might want to pursue. Now, I'm not saying that you enroll into a master's program and do it for 2 or 3 years, but maybe that might be an option, especially if you don't have a lot of research experience, because now it's just everyone's. We have a high school program. I mean, we have high school kids in there just tearing it up, and you're just like, oh my god. You remember high school, but so that's something you might want to think about. Anybody want to talk about science? Yeah.
What about the biotech industry? Like, what are the prospects of PhDs going into the biotech industry? Because I heard salaries are better.
Salaries are better. So there's definitely benefits to this. So there are a lot of good companies like Genentech that do really good science, but they're also a company. One of the things that you have to understand about academics versus industry are they're totally two different worlds. Both of them have their good points and low points. So it just depends on which one you fit in or want to fit in. Basically, in industry, what's going to happen is that you're kind of like on a contract basis sometimes, or sometimes not, but basically you have less intellectual freedom in most cases, not all cases, than you would if you were in academia, meaning that you guys need to produce a drug in a certain period of time because your company's financial survival depends on it. So that means that you just have to get it done, and that means your project leader is going to probably figure out a few avenues how to do that, and then just tell you to do the kind of research that needs to be done, rather than consulting with you or have you bring him ideas. Now, that's not always how it is, but that's generally how it is. I mean, it's a company. You're supposed to make money. So the hours are better. You work like 9 to 5, and you're not expected to work more than that, because then they have to pay you overtime. So I have a lot of friends that they want to just continue in science, but they don't like the long hours or whatever, and so they like that. I'm leaving the option open for industry, but my heart's more in academics, where I can just think freely. So in academics, you kind of have more freedom in what you do at a research institution or a college, university, but you're kind of on your own there. It's whatever it's based on all of your ideas, not some CEO or project manager. I mean, you have a project leader or a PI that will tell you the direction to go, but the salary typically isn't as good, and you have to work harder. But if you discover something, I mean, most likely your institution is going to own it, but you could still make a lot of money as an academic researcher, especially if you discover something. And plus, if you're a good scientist, you're going to be asked to give talks all the time and make appearances and be on the board of some drug company, even if you're not a drug scientist, like making drugs or something like that, because they'll want to consult with you, and you'll make money doing that. So you could supplement your income as an academic researcher by being a good scientist, and once you're a good scientist, people are going to pay you to talk to them. Like industry will pay you to talk to them, to consult with you. So you can make actually pretty good money. I hope does that answer your question? Or so basically, like, I don't know, what else? Anybody else have any questions about grad school in particular or research? I could talk about what I do for a couple minutes, and then maybe you guys can ask questions about that. So, as I mentioned before, I work in an immunology lab, so the goal of our lab is to understand the role of a certain family of transcription factors and how they control the development of T cell development. Well, other immune cells, but mostly T cells. So does everyone know what a transcription factor is?
No.
No? Okay, so does anybody know what one is? We work on them? So transcription factors are always going to be a hot subject to work on, because these are proteins, these are genes that make proteins that turn on or turn off genes. And usually that's a very temporally and spatially timed process, so that you get an arm at the right time, or your eyeball, or whatever it is, or immune cells developing at the right place in the right time. So understanding the genes that control the development of these things you might be able to understand, well, you'll learn the process of how that works and probably better understand why people have certain diseases or, developmental defects or things like that. So, as I mentioned, these family of proteins or the transcription factors activate or repress gene transcription and translation, and then protein. So you guys know all about that, like how to make DNA or make RNA from DNA and then make some protein. So this family of transcription factors that I am researching have been, over the last couple years, been really big in immune cell development. So in the absence of many of the genes in this family, so there's only 40 of this family in humans and in mice. And if you knock some of these genes out, you have a complete absence of some of your immune cells. One of them is called THPOC, and THPOC controls CD4 development. Does everyone know what a CD4 cell is? Have you heard one? So CD4 cells are like a certain lineage of immune cells that are really important to help your B cells and your killer cells, the ones that kill viruses and stuff, during infection. And people with HIV have the virus binds to CD4 cells and kills them, and then you don't have this process happen, and that's why people that have HIV tend to die because of a common infection that most of us would be cured of very fast. So understanding how THPOC controls the development of these cells might help in therapies and stuff like that for HIV and other immune deficient disorders. The one that we're studying actually has a role in another type of lineage of immune cells that are really cool. These are like T cells on steroids. Yeah, like Alex Rodriguez. Anyways, stupid. Forget that. So I don't have a board, but basically, so you have the bulk of your immune system is made up of T cells and these other myeloid cells. The myeloid cells kind of are less specific to infections, and they just kind of eat up stuff, like just random things. T cells are really specific. So these guys they eat stuff up and they work really fast, these myeloid cells. And then these kind of more adaptive immune cells, or T cells, they rearrange a T cell receptor through a really complicated process, but these T cells are specific for a particular viral protein that that are infected cells will present to the immune cells, and they'll bind, and if they become activated, they'll kill that cell. So if you're infected with a virus, that cell will tell your T cell, hey, I've got a viral protein in me, kill me, and your immune cell will recognize that and kill it. So there's one in the middle that's between the myeloid cells kind of and the T cells, and these guys are like really unique cells that only a few years ago were discovered. And what's unique about them is they have functional capacities that are similar to these guys, but they're really part of this family of T cells. So I know this is getting a little confusing, but essentially these guys are really rapid responding immune cells and have been implicated in cancer and diabetes especially. And diabetes is a big problem in the United States and also worldwide now, and we don't know why people get diabetes. I mean, we know kind of why, but we don't know really why. So a lot of people have been studying the function of the cells and the development of these cells. Remember, we're an immune cell development lab, so we're developmental biology. So of course, where do you go? You look at transcription factors. So we looked at the family of factors that remember the CD4 THPOC example I was talking about? So its brother, this other gene called PLZF, we found controls the development of the cells that I'm talking about, the weird, unique ones. And so about a year and a half ago, and we just published this paper last year, we took this gene, and what you do to understand what it does is you knock it out. Does anyone know what a knockout mouse is, or a knockout system? So you use, you can use different techniques depending on the system you use, but you use homologous recombination to target a gene to disrupt it or eliminate it from the genome. And so in my case, the mouse has a non-functional protein. So you knock it out, or does anyone know what else you do? Overexpress it, exactly. So what you can do is then make a mouse or whatever it is that you're studying and overexpress the protein and see what happens. So when we knocked it out, the cells that these weird guys that everyone wants to kind of know what's going on with them, those cells are gone. And that's like the eureka moment that you want in science. You're like, oh my God, they're gone. So obviously that gene is really important. So we went through the process of knocking out and overexpressing it and doing all kinds of different complicated experiments to find out whether or not this gene is in fact intrinsic to the cell development. And we found out that it was. And we got a really big paper out of it, and it was really nice. So these are the things that you really want. So what I'm doing is that there's another, so remember we have two types of we have two arms of the immune system. You have this guy and these guys, you have T cells and the myeloid cells. And there's a bunch of cells in the middle that I mentioned before that kind of characteristics of both, and these are the real focus right now. It's like, what are these cells doing? They're not quite, there's not a lot of them, and they don't quite, you could live without them, some of them, not all of them, but the question is like how do you, why are they there and what controls their development? And so my research is focusing on continuing on studying these cells. They're called innate-like T cells. And so they're T cells because they have a T cell receptor, but they function more like myeloid cells or rapid innate-like cells, meaning that when they become activated, they function very fast and they kill infections really fast. And so what I'm doing is looking at ways of studying another innate-like T cell and using our gene. And we found that our gene also controls the development of a very similar cell, one of the groups in here. And so our gene is pretty cool, and hopefully this paper will get published too. So, and then we're taking this gene and then putting it, as I mentioned, in these cells. So these cells don't have them, the regular T cells, and for years people have been trying to use regular T cells to kill tumors. And the reason why is because, so in cancer, does anybody know a lot about cancer? Cancer research, anybody interested? Yeah? So in cancer, I mean, tumors happen for a myriad of reasons. Many of them are due to like mutated proteins. Okay, so proteins that have some type of mutation or deletion, and that will give you an aberrant activity or function. In other words, sometimes the expression will be too high or too low, and that causes cancer. And basically, what happens is, as I mentioned before, your cells that are infected with either a virus or a mutated form of protein will show it to your T cells. And in some cases, in tumors, because you have a mutated protein, your T cells will recognize that and kill it. And so for years, like 20 years, people have been using your immune cells to get rid of tumors, and as type of different therapies and stuff like that. So, as you probably recognize, I mean, cancer is still a huge problem, and so in experimental systems we can kill tumors, but we're having a lot of trouble doing it in the clinic and in mice and other organisms. So what we're going to do is try to, and part of the problem is that the T cells aren't strong enough to kill the tumors. We don't know, we do know why, but not all the reasons, but it just can't get there. It'll see the tumor, it will hang on to it. You could take a camera and stick it to a mouse, an open mouse, and image a tumor while it's alive. And you could put the T cells in the tumor to have two different colors by this microscopy. So you can see a tumor in green and the T cell in red. And you'll see the T cell interact with the tumor forever, but it won't kill it. So we know that the T cells can see the tumor, it just can't get over this barrier to kill it. And the reason we think one of the reasons why is because the tumor is really complex for a ton of reasons, but the quick and dirty answer is that they're suppressing the T cell's activation. They're telling the cell, don't kill me, I want to live, just like everything, right? So one way that we're going to try to overcome this barrier is take this gene that we're working on that gives remember the T cell on steroids? We're going to give that factor that we know controls that function into regular T cells that don't have that gene and don't have that function. so that those cells will now be like on steroids. And those guys will hopefully go to the tumor and overcome this barrier of activation and hopefully start eliminating or help eliminate the tumor. And so that's just another example of taking basic research and then moving into the clinic. And so you remember that I mentioned that I used to work in gene therapy? Okay. So what we do so Michel Sadelain is one of my advisors, and he's literally the world leader on gene therapy. He has 2 clinical trials where he's engineered viruses to carry genes into T cells that specifically hunt out cancer antigens. Okay, meaning that the tumor will have a little mutated protein, and the T cell will carry a particular receptor that will recognize that and kill the tumor. And you put these into patients. Oftentimes, cancer patients are immunosuppressed because they take chemotherapy, which screws up their immune system. So you give them a ton of immune cells that will specifically go after the tumor. So those don't work too well, as you can imagine, probably because the tumors are suppressing those cells. So you have engineered cells with a virus that will go after those cancer cells, and they still don't work. So what we've done is engineered a really fancy virus that will carry the T cell receptor for the antigen on the tumor and our gene that makes them really tough. And so we're in the process of doing the initial experiments to see whether or not those immune cells with our factor are stronger. And if they are, then you would go forward and apply for a clinical trial. And so, this is like real bench to bedside, research. And I'm really lucky to be in the lab that I'm in, but also at the institution that I'm in, because that's kind of like the focus of the grad school is translational research, where what you do at the bench you could take to the clinic. And maybe not all of you are interested in that, but that's just one of the examples of what the research we're doing and what I'm doing in particular. So I have funding for this. My boss hopefully will get more funding for this. So, and hopefully it'll work. I don't know. We'll see what happens. That's the fun stuff. You get to find out if it works or not. So that's basically the overview of my grad school experience and research experience in a very short period of time. There was a lot of stuff in between that I'm sure you're not interested in, but I guess my time's about up. Do you guys have any general questions about anything? Research experience, grad school life, extracurricular stuff, problems? You're going to encounter a lot of problems, but remember what I said. Perseverance. If you really love what you're doing, don't let anybody, tell you can't or whatever, because you will encounter those people and a lot of problems, but stick to it. It's fun. Nothing? You guys are tired, want to go home? Go back to lab, Okay, well that's it, I guess. I could leave my email with everyone here if you guys want to contact me about anything at grad school or something that you didn't think of now or didn't want to ask in front of everyone. I'd be happy to get back to you.
What about housing? How does that work in grad school? Do you just get your own house, or do they provide you housing?
Get your own house? I think everybody would be. Well, it all depends. A lot of places will, but that's part of investigating about the program. Like our program provides housing, subsidized housing, so they don't give you one, but it's at a cheaper rate, so you still have to pay for it, and that will come out of your stipend. You don't even see that money; it just gets automatically deducted. Some places don't offer housing, like at UCSF. You have to find your own, which in San Francisco, it's not only really expensive, just like Manhattan, but it's almost landlocked, just like Manhattan is. So there's only a finite number of apartments you can find. So that can be challenging, or you get like 10 people to a house. So, it just depends. But most places will give you some type of housing. All right, I know you guys want to go. I need to get back to lab too. Well, thank you very much for your attention. And if you guys have any other questions, just email me. I hope it was somewhat informative. It was kind of like a very informal talk, but
It was good.
Okay.
It was good.
All right, guys. Well, good luck with your research, and hopefully we'll be seeing you guys in a lab in the future or something like that.